Surely people go into medicine with the intention of helping.
Most of the time the patient doesn't make it.
How do you cope with that?
We become desensitized.
You are the authority figure.
Yeah. We don't have power over these things.
It sounds like a systemic issue.
The people really to blame are the people in power.
You can make things so much worse.
The patient is the one who suffers.
Imagine you're in need of medical attention. So where do you go? The hospital. Now you're waiting. There are long queues. Finally, you get to the front, you get checked in. But there aren't enough beds. So what do you get? Well, the one that's available, which is an old mattress that doesn't feel comfortable. But it's cold. The aircon doesn't work. So you ask for a blanket. Also not enough. You only have the one thin one to keep you warm. You try to wash your hands in the sink doesn't work. You try to use the bathroom, there's no toilet seat. Try to take a shower, take a bath, only the cold water works. It's quite a miserable experience. So, you hope for the food. The food might keep you going. You look, it's breakfast, no one comes. It's lunch, no one comes. It's dinner, no one comes. There's aren't enough nurses to feed the people. So, it gets to the end of the day, at least you can get some well-needed shut-eye to deal with your medical condition. You put your head down, you get some sleep, but what happens? Someone tries to steal your stuff. You wake up, you shout for the nurses, shout for the doctors, none to be seen. There just aren't enough of them to go around. And that's the state of some of the clinics and some of the public hospitals in South Africa. And we've heard it all in the news, we've seen the videos, but we haven't yet heard it from what it's like to be the doctor on the other side. And that's why I thought it would be really valuable to get a doctor's opinion. So today, we're talking to Dr. Claudia. She has a deep emotional investment in her work and trying to make the public health sector better. And it would be really interesting to hear what she has to say, what life is like for her and other doctors in her position. So, Dr. Claudia, where were we? I think it's best we start with the video. It's just to set the context, because obviously in South Africa we've heard this, we've seen it on the news, it's all over social media, but I think given we have an international audience, it would be nice to provide some context.
Yeah, for sure.
So let me actually open it up for a second. Okay.
I was rushed to this hospital where I landed up in casualty. I slept in casualty for 3 days. There were no beds. I had no pillow, I had no blanket. I think on the second night a nurse brought me a blanket. I lost control of my bowels. There were no bathroom facilities, so I lay in my own feces for a day before I kicked up such a fuss that they moved me to Ward 8. Doctors that run around here, they treat the patients like cockroaches. No doctor, I haven't seen one doctor walk up to a patient in our ward and go, "Good morning, Mr. So-and-so, how are you?" Nothing. They treat the patients with absolute disdain and disrespect. Last night as I was sleeping, a woman came into the room, took the phone from right next to my head and stole it. Luckily, the guy opposite me saw it, woke me up, said, "Tom, someone's just stolen your phone." I got another guy to call it, and I heard it ringing from down the passage, and I tracked her down to a ward where she was trying to remove the SIM card.
Right. That was quite harsh, especially on the doctors.
Yeah.
What's your take? I think we just start there, point in blank.
Yeah. Look, I have always been a doctor that advocates for their patients. So initially I thought, I can't justify doctors or our colleagues based on this video and how they've treated him specifically and the patients around him. So initially I thought, okay, cool. I mean, he has every right to say everything that he said. That is the reality, unfortunately. But when you take a step back and actually analyze what he said, it was actually quite unfair because he doesn't have the background story of what it's like working in those circumstances. Being a patient in those circumstances and being a professional in those circumstances are two completely different things. A lot of doctors got very upset. A lot of doctors sort of understood where he was coming from. But I think people need to understand that you only really get it if you're in it.
So where is the disconnect for you?
Look, at the end of the day, I think the people really to blame are the people in power, the people creating the infrastructure of our health system, the people creating the jobs in our health system, because we all know we have a crisis in South Africa where we are understaffed as healthcare professionals. The patient to doctor ratio, the patient to nurse ratio it's ridiculous. It's out of this world. An example is in private, a nurse will be responsible for 3 patients. In government, you have a nurse for 20 patients. So he says, and I mean, of course, you don't wish this upon anyone. He lied in his feces for a whole day. And it's true. We see it all the time. But when you have one nurse for 20 patients, she kind of has to prioritize her patients on who's worse off.
Being on the other side of this, and this is why it's interesting, because I can obviously come from the side of the patient, you come from the side of the doctor. So like for us, we're in the UK, and we hear a very similar situation where, there aren't enough doctors to go around, there aren't enough nurses to go around. So I can understand this. Surely there must be some sort of, I want to say, rule that says a human can only take maximum. I mean, like if you're a childcare minder, there's a legal rule that you can't do more than 5 kids, for example. I don't know what the rule is, because otherwise it's illegal. Surely there must be something similar for someone who's actually medically treating and needing helping people.
Course. No, I agree.
Is there like a ratio that's max capacity that you guys know about?
We don't. I have no idea if such a thing exists. And as much as we sort of fight for it, and as much as we advocate for ourselves as healthcare professionals, we never get answers. We just get pushed back by there's no budget.
This is what you said. Oh man, and you said this, and as you said, it just riled me up, because I went and I'm like, okay, well, his story has been around just long enough for someone to have answers. And they went to the Minister of Health and they said, look, what is his take on this? And he genuinely said that the state of the hospital or the care facility does not impact on the care that is provided to its patients. What is your take on that?
The thing is, like I said, the patient-doctor ratio is already a burden on its own. On top of that, you don't have the resources that you need. So it's not only understaffed, but it's under-resourced. We have the issue of load shedding. Some hospitals, literally, you can't do x-rays, you can't do investigations because it's load shedding. They have generators which don't have petrol. So, we have to deal in these environments. I mean, there was a stage where when I was working in the EC, the electricity went out. We were literally using our flashlights on our phones during an emergency. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, this is unacceptable. This is insane. Like, in the moment, you're there, you're focusing on the patient, you're trying to get them back. But afterwards, we sat together, because after a resuscitation, you have to debrief about what went wrong, what went right, what we could have done different, what we did well. So there's always a debrief. And in that session, we didn't realize how ridiculous it was that we were using our phone torches to try and resuscitate a patient. So, obviously, like I said, we are so limited ourselves. We try and voice as much as we can, but we don't have power over these things.
See, I keep trying to pull this back to what it was like for me when I did the technical side, the theory. And I can imagine, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, when you're doing the theory and learning to become a doctor and doing all your the various disciplines, surely none of this stuff comes up as potential things you need to be thinking about. How do you reconcile these two? And like, how do you go? Because I mean, when I think about you using a torch for an emergency, you think about someone being stranded on an island and this is all you have available, right? Not a place in a hospital that has been geared to help someone. How do you guys even come up with, like, how does this happen? How do you guys deal with this on a day-to-day?
It's kind of funny. I always tell, the people around me, the Claudia as your friend or family member is not Dr. Claudia. You literally change in the sense of you go into this fight or flight mode. There is no time to judge things and judge the system. Like, what can I do right now? It's like I don't have time to complain that there's no lights. Like, get me something, get me lights, So in the moment, yeah, it sucks, but that's not the priority. But afterwards, of course, like, it sucks because you tried your best, but after resuscitation, maybe most of the time the patient doesn't make it. and you walk out and you have a whole queue of patients shouting and screaming at you because they've been waiting for so long, when you literally just lost a patient after your best efforts, after having to use your phone as a light because there was...
So what is that like? To me, it sounds traumatic. Yeah, because I think as a normal person, and I say normal, you're obviously a normal person. You know what I mean? But when you think of a medical professional, and this was so funny because when I was talking to you and I was writing up this interview, and I was trying to hold you accountable for the stuff that Tom was saying, it's like I was putting you as a person that you have to have all the answers because you're the medical professional, and it's your fault. Yeah, it's like you aren't, not that you're not human, but like you are the authority figure.
Yeah.
But then as I'm talking to you, I'm like, man, but you know, she's very much, it could have been me on sitting in her position, and someone's talking to me, doing like, I should have the answers. And it did humanize a lot of this issue. But how do you, if this happens every day,
Which it does.
how do you cope with that?
That's the thing. It happens so often that it actually becomes normal to us. And without realizing, and it's not a conscious decision we make, we become desensitized. And there was never a moment where I was like, Claudia, you need to become desensitized. It just happens. And then it shifts to another point where you got to consciously remind yourself, remember, you're still human and that we're treating a human, because very easily do our patients become numbers. As much as we don't want to admit it, it is the reality. And I see from Tom's perspective, what happens is you, as a doctor, are so focused on getting the work done. You have ward rounds that are coming up. So you have all these other things going in your mind that you almost, it's not an excuse, and I don't justify doctors not greeting their patients. I mean, that's inexcusable. But you have so much going on in your mind, you almost forget. It's overwhelming. What people maybe don't realize, in South Africa, we work 30 to 36-hour shifts. I mean, you didn't have an opportunity to close your eyes. There is no designated time for you to take a break. Like when there's 5 minutes, you quickly grab a protein bar to munch. I mean, you can go those 30 hours with no food.
How is that okay?
It's not okay, and no one's talking about it, and it's almost like it's expected from the doctors.
I mean, a pilot flies, I want to say 7 hours, and they legally have to stop, take a break, and they can't fly again that day because they're, you know, I don't know if it is 7 hours, but like there's a time limit. Definitely not 36, right? It's going to be 12 or 13. You're equally doing a job that requires mental faculties. So how have we gotten to a point where we expect someone to be working hour 36 at the same pace and at the same accuracy as someone who's just started work hour 1?
It's insane.
That's not possible. No human can do that.
I don't understand how there isn't a law for this. I don't understand how this is still happening in 2024. I mean, and I'm not even a surgeon. You have surgeons who have been awake for 30 hours operating on people. But now, look, surgeons are a different breed. I mean, they're amazing. I don't know what they're on. But, I mean, there was a study done that proved whether you sleep deprived or not, the complications are basically the same, which was a very interesting study. So that almost supported keeping doctors awake. Or, you know,
wait, say that again. I need more clarity on what you're saying there.
There was a study done specifically for surgeons who had rest and surgeons who had been awake for the last 30 hours operated at the same time. And the surgeon who hadn't had rest didn't necessarily have more complications in the operation than the surgeon who did have rest.
I wonder if it was the Minister of Health that did that study. It sounds to me like someone would be...
I don't think it was a South African study, actually.
All right, maybe projecting.
Yeah.
Okay, look, you said something earlier that was quite... You spoke about, you know, how doctors treat their patients. And the reason I think about this a lot is because... So we obviously have a more integrative approach to like the supplements that we sell. We advocate all the time that these stuff should be taken with conventional therapies, and it's not a substitute, it's an addition to. Because we often find people come to us being disassociated by the medical experience they've had.
Yeah.
And they're really just looking for someone to listen to them. Yeah,
for sure.
And oftentimes, and this is the problem, and this is something I'm hoping that we can get through in this podcast, is that I understand that people might feel disassociated and they're just looking for someone to listen to them, but you must be careful who's the one listening, because they might not always have your best interest at heart.
For sure.
And
yeah.
I mean, especially in places that aren't regulated, you can make things so much worse.
Mm.
So that's also something I'm constantly encouraging. So I'm really hoping that this kind of podcast, where we can get some clarity and some understanding, can help people know that you may think that this person, they aren't treating you right, but it doesn't mean that they don't have your best interest at heart.
Yeah, for sure.
And that we shouldn't give up on conventional, because it's fundamentally it's the most well-researched and well-backed.
Exactly. It's got the most proof.
Fundamentally, it's what medicine is made up of. I think if anyone studies evidence-based medicine, how it came to be, they'd understand why conventional therapy is so important.
Yeah. So I want to touch a bit on the hierarchy system and the toxicity amongst us colleagues, and how this has actually been something over the generations. So just to explain how it works, the top dog in medicine would be your professor, right?
Right.
Underneath them would be the specialist, which in state we call the consultant. So in private, if you're going to, for example, a dermatologist or a gynecologist, that's your specialist who's your consultant. Beneath them are the doctors who are busy training to be specialists, called the registrars. And then beneath them is your medical officer, which are, like, I'm a medical officer at this point, who are doctors not necessarily specializing, but are maybe working in that field. Essentially, a medical officer can do anything, like a general practitioner.
Right.
Then you have your community service doctors, your interns, and then your medical students. So in South Africa, you study for 6 years. Then you have to do 3 years for the government. So 2 years internship, 1 year community service. So now, unfortunately, there's this culture of belittling, breaking your confidence, making you seem like you don't know anything, and it comes all the way from the top. So your consultant will make your registrar feel stupid and be like, back in my day, we had to do this. Back in my day, we worked harder than you guys. We didn't get sleep. Then that toxicity goes down the registrar, down to like the medical officer then. So all the way down to your students. And now as a student, I experienced this myself. I mean, we once had a consultant who was like, leave my ward round. You're a waste of my time. You don't know anything. But I mean, you're a student. You're there to learn. Of course you don't know anything. So these microaggressions go all the way through, and people become mean. And you, because you underwent sort of that abuse, you kind of become mean too. It's like, okay, when I become a senior doctor, I'm also going to treat the juniors like shit because I was treated like that. So, for example, he talks a lot about junior doctors having this attitude. Your consultant says round starts at 7. Now he's coming from home, he's had his breakfast, his coffee, you've been there since 5. You have to see 20 patients and make sure they're all seen. They've got plans made up for them so that when your consultant arrives, he doesn't care if everyone's seen or not, he starts. So you're under a lot of stress, and this consultant's gonna scrutinize you. So I remember as an intern, that was always something at the back of my head. I need to hurry up. Like, the consultant's going to be in the next 5 minutes. I've still got 5 patients to see. So it's like, I think it's not on purpose that we don't greet. Like I said, it's not right, but it's just something to think about at the back of your mind.
That is difficult. Yeah. How can you foster a positive work experience and do your best for the person while, first of all, being hounded by your superiors?
Yeah, constantly being told you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You're not doing a good job when you're literally running on reserves. Yeah.
Now the patient is upset with you.
Yeah.
Right, because they think you're not doing good enough either.
Yeah.
I mean, this is quite. It's quite a. I can appreciate the difficulty for a human being to take on that load.
Yeah. And on top of that, you have this dilapidated structure that's not functioning, like you don't have running water. If a patient doesn't have water, neither does the doctor. We don't have the resources, and often we waste so much time looking for what we need to do for the patient. I mean, there were times where I had to walk to different wards. It would take an hour of my time just to find what I need, and in that hour, how many patients could I have seen? So it's also very frustrating. Simple things like, There are certain roles in the hospitals, your cleaners, your porters, your nurses. Those roles are so important because if it's not done, we can't do our jobs either.
So then as a doctor, what is an outlet for you guys? Or for you, actually, specifically?
I think, family and friends, getting outside of the medical world. And obviously everyone is something different, but personally, most of my friends are people who are not in the medical field. I try to get away from it as much as possible. So it's just escaping the medical atmosphere and environments as a whole. But what I can say, unfortunately, there are doctors with addiction problems. There really are, more than you think.
Well, I can imagine substance abuse comes from a coping mechanism.
Yeah, for sure.
As I'm listening to this, I'm trying to reconcile this because we've got someone working 36 hours. The patient, they don't have the capacity, number one. They're seeing too many people. The individuals that are supposed to be helping them are in charge and leading them are giving them a difficult time and not allowing them to do their work properly because they themselves are being watched by someone who is doing the same thing and that chain goes all the way up. And then you don't have the facilities. Because I'm a problem solver by nature. Yeah. So like, you listen to this, I'm like, okay, but can we do this? Can we do this? I wouldn't really know where to start, but I know you spent some time as part of your community service working in a township.
Yeah.
And this was a huge project for you. You try to get this place functioning.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about that time?
Yes, sure. So I had finished my 2 years of internship at Grootseskeer. It is, if not the best state hospital in the country. So I came back very inspired from it, ready to take on this role of bringing change and bringing a higher level of healthcare to this township, only to get to a completely dysfunctional clinic. Like, in my mind, I couldn't believe, how is this open? How is this even allowed? So, simple examples, we never had stock of medication, even Panado syrup for kids. Like, a mother will bring a child in with a crazy temperature which can cause convulsions. Literally, it's the simplest treatment, Panado. And this kid is having a convulsion in front of you and you don't have Panado. We didn't have needles, we didn't have syringes, we didn't have gauze. Patients would come to me and I was always apologizing. I'm like, I'm sorry, And it just got so frustrating that eventually I was like, okay, I need to do something. I started buying my own needles. I started buying syringes, gauze, stock for me to use for my patients, which is completely unacceptable. I mean,
that's insane.
Yeah. And then our pharmacy was this little storeroom and the keys were missing for the last 3 years. So why did we not have stock? Because this storeroom wasn't regulated. There was no stock taking. People were helping themselves. And I mean, I do believe I'm quite a nice person, but I just became this dragon. So obviously I contacted the appropriate people, went through the channels, went to like the head of the health departments. I'm not going to say which province or all of that. And just to get through to them was a hassle. And then I became the problem,
Yeah, because who's this nail that's sticking out?
Yeah.
There needs to be hammered back down.
And eventually what happened is, again, like I mentioned earlier, I had to leave my role as a doctor and take on administrative responsibilities like counting stock, making sure the storeroom has stock. Like, I have patients to see. I have this queue of patients waiting for me.
You're the only one.
Yeah.
That's the doctor there. Now you're busy doing that as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it was a lot of fighting. I mean, I was, like I said, I was a dragon. I was just fighting with everyone. The only person I was kind to was my patient in front of me. It was like two different faces, when I'm speaking to my nurse colleague, like, I hate you. And then with my patient, I'm so sorry, like, I want to help you. And anyway, but eventually I realized I need to change my approach because I need a team. And it's also not fair how I'm letting off my frustration and anger onto my teammates, my colleagues, and I need to change my way of handling the situation. So I started doing training sessions with them on basics. Then this pharmacy was an issue, obviously, or this room. Yeah, we pushed. Eventually, I'm proud to say we got a pharmacist. We got a brand new, like office, I would call, with an air conditioner to keep the meds cool, with like double security gates, all these things. So that was good.
Well, it's quite an achievement. I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
honestly, it sounds like you did a miracle. But yeah.
But the thing that was so difficult for me is no one supported me.
Yeah.
Even so, once a week we would meet up because we're a bunch of doctors that we the district doctors, and my colleagues would look at me like, "What are you doing?" You know, like they didn't. My own doctor colleagues didn't support me.
Yeah.
And I felt so alone. The system didn't support me. People were hating on me like, who do you think you are? What are you trying to do? So the people who are supposed to solve the problem were against me as well. And I'm like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
How can I tell a patient I don't have Panado? Like, come
Yeah.
on, you know? So yeah, it was a roller coaster, man. I mean, we didn't even have an adequate like emergency room. So yeah, it became my mission. If I leave this place, it must at least have an adequate emergency room, you know? At least have everything functioning. Let it be well stocked. And I wish more had come out of it, and I wish I'd done more. But just having a secured pharmacy was something big for me, and having a functioning emergency room was big for me. So we managed. And what kept me going, you're going to ask me, like, how did you keep going? The patients. Like, and I even get emotional about it because these patients come from very, very underprivileged, impoverished communities. They didn't have... So when you get referred to the hospital, you need someone to go with you, a family member or a friend. But now the concern is, okay, but how am I going to get back home? I don't have money, like taxi fare to go back home, now what? And where the clinic was and the hospital was about 15 Rand one way. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, 15 Rand. Like, you don't think about it like that. What is 15 Rand? For these people, so a lot of the time I was giving them their taxi fare, and then they would come back a few weeks later with a chocolate. Now, how much is a chocolate? A chocolate is 15 Rand. Yeah, so, I mean, coming from a point where they didn't have 15 Rand to catch the taxi to come back home, to coming back to me a few weeks later with a chocolate that costs 15 Rand to say thank you. I mean, that really, really touched my heart, and that really pushed me like, this is what I'm here for. I am this beacon of hope for these people, because this whole time there was a clinic that technically didn't exist. I mean, it was open, but they would come here and not get any help at all. And now that they're getting a little bit of help, they are just so grateful. I was quite sad when I had to leave because my government time was up, and the patients would they wouldn't want to let me go. They would hold, I remember on my last day, and I get a bit emotional about it, they just didn't want to let me go. They were like, doctor, don't leave us. But yeah, I'm not blowing my own horn here. I mean, I'm just being honest with you.
Blow that horn. You have every right to.
Yeah. I mean, I made mistakes, trust me.
Yeah.
I made mistakes. There's a lot of things I wish I did differently. But I was always a doctor for the patient, always. I mean, I called the manager of the clinic the worst things possible. I mean, I swore that lady so many times. I don't know how I didn't lose my job. Because at the end of the day, the patient is the one who suffers. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault that the government sucks. It's not their fault that we don't have stock. It's not their fault that we are burnt out, you know? Like, so why are they the ones getting the short end of the stick, you know? So when Tom says, you know, we don't care and we don't deserve to live, he actually said that. I was like, whoa, bro, you do not know what we go through. Yes, there's always rotten apples in any profession, but the majority of us, we really do care. We give out of our own pockets. And I'm sorry he had that experience. I mean, and a lot of my colleagues that I've been chatting to are like, you know what, actually we needed to hear that, because it's the small things that make the biggest impact. Not saying good morning. No one cares how perfect your diagnosis is. If you don't say good morning, you know what I mean? So it was good for us to introspect as well, definitely. But I just want patients to see us differently, you know. And that is not our fault, really. It's not our fault that you don't have a bathroom. We fight for it as well. And we wish we could do more, but it's really out of our control.
I think I need to take a moment. I think it might now be time for me to get that IV.
By the way, I
'Cause-
do IVs.
Yeah, I need a moment to digest this. It's a lot. I think it's the first time in a podcast where I was like, Marco, don't say anything. I can't believe what I'm hearing right now. Like, you have nothing to add to this. Just listen, because this is insane. So I think it might be time for me to just get because I'm really keen. But I think what I do need after this intensity is a bit of a pick-me-up.
Yeah, for sure.
The IV therapy I'm doing today, what is it called?
IV boost.
Boost. Okay.
Yeah.
And how will this one help me?
So just to introduce my little business. It's called IV Glow, and I decided to name all my drips IV something. So IV Boost, IV Skin, IV Mood, whatever. So the Boost is really one of the best in terms of it gives you a bit of everything. So you're getting all the supplements that we have available at the correct dosages in order to give you energy, both physically and mentally. I think today a lot of us struggle with brain fog, especially, and this just gives the brain a little bit of that nutrition that it needs. And the benefits of IV therapy is that it's going directly into the bloodstream. It doesn't have to go through the digestive pathway, so you're getting 100% of that nutrition or that supplement into where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And you asked me earlier, how did my outlets? So I did IV therapy throughout internship, ComServe, and I think that's what prevented a lot of my burnouts. It just kept me going. Instead of drinking a supplement every 2 weeks, I would just supplement intravenously, and I felt the benefits. So I thought, okay, it works for me. It literally got me through these hectic times. So yeah, I'm going to do this for other people.
Okay.
So that's the vibe.
Let's start.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Cool.
So that was quite the experience. I will say that I'm surprised how it didn't hurt. Like, I know when you go to the hospital, maybe it's because you're in a state where you're like in panic.
Yeah,
like,
I
now
think
I'm
so.
calm and relaxed, and
Like you're actually choosing to get a needle.
yeah, because
No,
it's
I'm
my
joking.
choice.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to get back to the story at hand. Yeah, I feel, especially after speaking to you, it's evident that there's been a miscommunication between the patient and the doctor.
For sure.
And I hate to say this because this word for me is such a cop-out, but like it sounds like a systemic issue where it's so structural. But the problem with saying it's systemic is like me as the patient sits there, this is a systemic issue. The doctor says it's a systemic issue. And then even the Minister of Health will sit there and be like, this is a systemic issue.
Yeah.
But fundamentally just nothing's being done.
Yeah.
We obviously need more doctors like you who are taking the initiative, because if everyone did that and just works on, earlier we spoke about in a different podcast, we spoke about the Kaizen principle, just being 1% better than the day before. And like if we can just improve, if everyone can just improve a little bit, it'll help dramatically over a period of 10 years or whatever time you look at it. But what is your key takeaway here from how we can kind of bridge this disconnect and improve on the situation?
I think you said it. It's lack of communication. If we start talking about it, I mean, the positive about this whole Tom London story is it got people talking. It got patients talking, it got doctors talking. So everyone's talking about it, and I think the more we talk, the more awareness, the more pressure the people on top get, because now they realize, we got to start doing something because everyone's watching us now. So I think it's just we need to continue talking. And as a patient, I find in state, and Tom mentions it as well, he said they feel scared to speak up because maybe their treatment would be affected, which is not true. I encourage patients, don't be scared to ask questions.
Something I always thought about and it's very clear to me that for some reason people don't do this enough. If you have a health condition, if you have an issue, I feel like it is your job, because you're living with it, to just try to become the expert in that health condition.
For sure, yeah.
It is yours. You're the one
Yeah.
to live. No one will have as personal connection to it as you do, because you have it.
Yeah. And of course, unfortunately, we shouldn't accept it. We shouldn't accept the circumstances in the state hospital, but unfortunately, it's the reality.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in that situation, look, I mean, it is what it is, unfortunately. Don't accept it, of course. Voice your opinions, but just understand that this is the reality, you know.
I think a big takeaway for me is, I mean, we spoke about what the patient can do, but it's really clear to me that I think a huge part that I would like as the patient to instill in the medical professional is that, guys, what legacy are you guys leaving? Yeah, like, it is very evident that you aren't thinking about your legacy. You're not thinking about the legacy of the medical profession, and especially the impact of the patient. And like I had a great conversation with an individual who his entire job is trying to get people to think about their legacy they're leaving.
Yeah.
But if you're a doctor, and this one hit home to me when I heard it, if you were a doctor and you were to die tomorrow, yeah, what legacy have you left behind today?
Yeah.
And I think that just to put the ball in their courts, also think about that and introspect a bit. And I think if we do that and continue having these type of conversations, we'll get to a point where we can really put pressure on people that need to do the change and make the change.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think we should be acting as a team as opposed to...
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to lose hope, but I can say for sure that there's still a lot of us who have fight in us and want to be part of the change. And so I know from Tom's perspective, doctors are useless, but there's amazing doctors out there in state, more than less. And, you know, I don't think patients must give up on the doctors. You know, there's a lot of good ones. So, yeah, just don't think it's the worst thing if you end up in state. There are people that care.
I think it's just best to leave it right there. I think that's a nice end to the conversation. Thank you very much for being
Cool,
here today.
of course. Thanks for having me and sharing my story. Yeah.